everyone. On behalf of the IMCI, I would like to thank each of you for attending our session today. As Gugana mentioned, I'm a Delwyn Holder, and I'll be a moderator for this Future Leaders Forum conversation. Today, we'll be having a chat with Aurelia Costache, a partner at Ernst & Young, about her work and her leadership process, following which we would invite you all to join in with some of your own questions and thoughts about this so timely topic of intelligent automation. For those of you that have never attended one of our sessions before, the Future Leaders Forum was founded with the goal of gathering young minds, motivated minds like yourself, to work together for the sustainable development of management consulting. You know, it seeks ultimately to provide a platform for exchanging views about the profession, you know, gather knowledge that may be of benefits to clients and yourselves, whilst growing a strong network of individuals and developing leadership skills. So this morning, I would like to introduce you to our special guest, Aurelia Costache. She is the Intelligent Automation Leader for Ernst & Young in the EMEIA, a region which covers Europe, the Middle East, India, and Africa, and includes, I think, close to like 60 countries, if I'm not mistaken. She has vast experience in digital transformation projects for large organizations, and she has led multiple high-scale implementations throughout her career, both in Romania and internationally. As a young, forward-looking professional, Aurelia is keen on bringing to market innovative, cutting-edge solutions that integrate technologies and creating new opportunities for growth. The holistic approach to clients' business transformation has enabled her to advise some of the leading companies in Romania on their automation strategy. Welcome, Aurelia.
Thank you, Adelwyn, and I'm really honored to be here today with you. Although I must admit that I'm, deeply concerned with the events unfolding in the last 2 weeks around us. But we really hope this will come soon to a conclusion.
Yes, well, I know a lot of persons are equally concerned, and we pray that it will be resolved in a timely manner. All right, so today we will be discussing with you intelligent automation, and I guess we could dive right in, right? So the term intelligent automation came about officially in 2017, but as far as I'm aware, it was being implemented in some form or another by larger organizations around the world long before 2017. For those of us here today who are unfamiliar with the term or hearing the term for the first time, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is?
Yes, of course. And as you also mentioned, there are various definitions, and they can vary from, the combination of emerging technologies with existing technologies, which would facilitate the end-to-end automation of processes. There was also a definition of Gartner, I think in 2019, of hyperautomation, which actually includes the intelligent automation, which looks at the combination of advanced technologies to increase the automation of processes and actually to augment humans. I think this is one of the key aspects. Myself, I'm usually trying to discuss with my clients in a more simplified manner to make the technology more close to be understood by them. And I'm trying to split the concepts in sort of new colleagues, digital workers, I would call them, and I group them in four types. And I say, the combination of technologies which help us as humans to do more work can be either a simple digital worker, which can only execute some activities. And this is like a robotic process automation, very simple actions that you tell the robot to do. It can be, then if you add to this worker some new skills like reading skills. So if you put OCR technology close to that, then you can have like a digital reader. Then if you add to that also capabilities to talk, like chatbot, you can have a digital talker. And then, of course, the digital thinker, where you really, involve machine learning and more advanced artificial intelligence technologies that could predict and take some actions later. So this is the way I look at the technology, trying to see how it helps humans to improve the normal working processes.
Okay. So given that it is being applied to end-to-end processes, as you mentioned, and making things simpler and easier for us, right? I know that the applications for IA or intelligent automation is widespread, right? And in some of my cursory reading, I've seen it applied in things like the health services industry. I've seen it applied in retail. Can you give us a couple examples of how it's being applied in some of the client organizations that you've worked for, and even some of the other industries or sectors IA might, we see more and more IA being rolled out?
Yes, I think as you also mentioned, it's not focused on one industry. Yeah, it's cross industries. It's applicable to any type of activity. I see it more from the variation of complexity of such projects when we apply intelligent automation. It can start from a simple, robotic process automation, which can pay invoices or transfer certain information from one place to another. It can go to automating end-to-end processes by divisions, by functions, yeah, in HR, in finance, in supply chain. But it can also go to real intelligent automation, where you look across all the business units, where you combine all the technologies, and we have seen in practice such hyper automation projects. Very successful ones lately are the ones who are looking at transforming, for example, customer contact centers, where you help the agents with virtual agents around them to be able to quickly connect all the information, provide to customers information quickly, and so on.
All right. So I'm gathering that as you mentioned, as you gave that example of like a call center, right? So I'm assuming that IA, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, right, is actually combining multiple technology layers to solving a process issue, correct? So, because I think you mentioned, like for instance, helping a virtual assistant. So I assume that's probably around machine learning, um, a bit of database management, and maybe a bit of AI as well, in terms of being able to intelligently respond to a customer and take particular decisions or actions based on that. That's correct, right?
Yes, indeed. It combines various technologies, whatever is necessary in the specific client context, because this is also an important aspect. It's not like a one size fits all or one model fits all.
Right.
It really depends on the existing architecture that the client has, and then how we move from there to really automating end to end. And it can include also workflow management systems. It can include various advanced analytics techniques and so on.
Okay. So then, so for a lot of these organizations that you've worked with, right, can you kind of walk us through what were some of the benefits that they derived as a result of implementing IA?
Yes, I think this is one of the most debated subjects with our clients, of course, when we start projects. How do we build the business case? Which are the benefits? And from this perspective, we normally explain that this can fall in different categories. Is the classical, let's say, quantitative benefits. Yeah, you save effort, you save FTE, you actually avoid FTE if you increase the volume, and you actually put robots instead of hiring people. So it's savings, save also processing time, and so on. But equally important, we try to explain and we try to capture and even sometimes transforming quantitative the qualitative ones, like data quality, like reducing operational risks. For example, we have started 6 years ago, and when we started with UiPath, the robotic process automation, one of the first processes we have automated in banks was the garnishment. So if you don't put the garnishment in time, there are some legal implications for the banks. They could be receive fines. So then if you have high volumes and you're not able to respond in time, that automatically there are some penalties. So quantifying operational risk, legal risk, sometimes there are confidential information that are processed by robots, which are not being able to, processed by too many people in short period of time. So we try to look at all the qualitative aspects apart from the obvious one, the quantitative one. I'm talking also about improving customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, especially in these days, when the talent is more and more difficult to find. But we also see, and I think this is the most interesting ones, is the combination of qualitative and quantitative. If you think of, for example, improving both all aspects. Let's take an example of, I don't know, using IoT in some refrigerators for, let's say, the beverages industry. The beverages industry is using IoTs in refrigerators of bars, for example, transmitting directly to the manufacturing, to the plants of the producer. When the stocks are lower, automatically filling in, the replenishment systems and so on. So you can actually look at, end-to-end automation of certain processes from consumer till the real, till the backend, till the production line. And this is a combination of employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, reducing time, reducing cost, and so on.
Okay. You raise a very interesting point there. So for instance, I'm thinking here, if you're looking at, so like, okay, if an end-to-end process may actually cross from, let's say if I'm the client organization, I may have data sets or information that might transcend my organization and into partnering organizations. Some of the projects that you've implemented actually, I would assume, looked at how data moves across multiple organizations, right? Is that correct? And has that presented like any issues for like data transparency and, like you mentioned, confidentiality and stuff like that?
Yes, I mean, we see more and more the data being the central point of the intelligent automation. It's actually clearly the data becoming the basis of all the activities that we do these days. On the other hand, I would not, or we will treat the data confidentiality or any transfer of data in the same manner that you treat it in any other project. I mean, all the legal requirements, all the regulations, they still need to be fulfilled with the specific controls which are in place in that organization. So we only need to make sure we are following the same rules.
Okay, that's perfect. All right. So in terms of how management consultants as a profession, how we work, engage clients, and relate one to another, where do you see intelligent automation and other similar technologies taking us into the future?
This is indeed like a wider subject. I think on one hand, if I look at the evolution of the technology and the evolution of automation projects, we normally classify them in three categories. One would be what we call generation one, which was the pure basic automation using the robotic process automation. Then is the current one, which is hyper automation or generation two, where we combine various technologies to automate end-to-end processes. And then we see slowly using data, as you mentioned, being able to use artificial intelligence for automating. So it's not about using some machine learnings here and there, which we also do now, but it's about really being able to collect the knowledge about processes in a centralized place and then use machine learning techniques to automatically adjust and automate other processes. And this is what we call AI-powered automations. And we don't know exactly when that will be, in 3, 4, 5 year times or more or sooner. It depends how quickly the technology would evolve, of course. But then there are other aspects. So this is, yeah, maybe purely technology evolution, which surprises us, of course, as we have seen in the last years. But then there are also other aspects that I would consider when we look at the evolution of management consulting and the way we interact with clients. What we see more and more these days is the infusion, so-called infusion of automation in other type of projects. So we see more and more colleagues, for example, from tax department doing tax transformations where automation is automatically embedded from the beginning in all the new, let's say, operating model that they are putting in place. Similarly for HR, similarly for risk or any other function. So embedding automation in every aspect of rethinking the way we work, the way we interact with our customers and so on. This is becoming more and more, let's say, a norm. I also see in this part the role of consultants, our role, very important in educating the market, because it's not, it's not something that comes overnight for our clients to understand all these concepts and to understand the benefits. So we and you here, we are playing a very important role to explain the benefits, to actually tackle the change management aspects of projects, also to think beyond what you can do or we can do individually, because more and more is also the concept of ecosystems of partners. So even ourselves, when we go in these big projects, we cannot handle, let's say, all the aspects of such hyper automation projects. So we normally go in partnerships either with various vendors, technology vendors, either with multiple technology vendors, either a combination in specific cases with local smaller companies, subcontractors, because there are specific situations country by country. And maybe another aspect is the evolution more and more towards the so-called managed services type of automation. So even organizations who don't want to take the burden of the infrastructure, but want to use a bot for a period of time for a specific area and then don't pay when they don't use it. So we start to see models and evolution of models towards this way of working, this business model.
Okay, that's all pretty interesting. I like the part that you mentioned about the on-demand IA, which I think is going to be, I see it as a benefit for like small to possibly medium organizations that you mentioned may not have the financial capacity or wherewithal to have an entire system on premises or otherwise at their disposal 24/7, when they may just need it for one particular operation at a given point in time. I like that particular trend or possibility, because I know that some organizations, you would tell them about IA and other tools, and the first issue that comes up is always the issue of cost. They may not have the capital or the investment to make. They may not have the capital to make such large investments in something that they don't understand that well, which goes to the other point that I particularly liked about us as consultants being able to educate clients and the wider market about the possibilities of IA and other technologies. So you have machine learning, artificial intelligence as well. And the other one you mentioned was, change, right? So how do we manage change? And I know it's a topical issue for most management consultants, because we are often called into organizations for that very purpose, right? Taking the organization in its current state and transforming it to a future or desired state. So all excellent points, and I really like what you've brought across. But one of the other issues coming out of it for me though is the issue of like talents and skills, right? So I guess outside of educating clients, I guess a lot of us may or may not, and you could probably jump in and tell me if we would have to pick up additional training or insights so that we can actually fulfill that role of bringing clients on board and up to date.
This is a very, very wide subject, and as any consultant, I would say the answer it depends, right?
Right.
It depends on the, I don't know, business area that you are working with or serving the clients with, yeah, whether it's HR or finance or supply chain and so on. It depends also if you are working in, helping the clients for larger transformation projects. Because, for example, my thinking is always not to focus on technology, right? Because technology and the hard skills, somehow they can be always learned. While what is more important is the soft skills, the attitude of learning, of wanting to learn something new, of bringing something new to the client and so on. And anyhow, this automation projects, what we normally see the most successful, the small islands of automation, how we call them, where you see here and there some bots and that's all. The real successful one are where the client is starting a business transformation project. Business transformation linked to the strategy of the organization, and then cascading down to the digital transformation, cascading to automation. I mean, this should be like a very clear link between the each layer in order to really have successful transformation. And there are discussions with clients. I always tell them, it's not about doing the same things differently with the bots or with machine learning. It's about doing different things, right? It's about really transforming, re-engineering the process so that you can do something new which was not possible before. Something which, if you think of only of the huge personalization offers that we receive, being targeted by when you go online and you suddenly receive a personalized offer. This wouldn't have been before possible without the technology and the use of data and machine learning. Another example is in sustainability, which is such a hot topic these days, right? I have another client who is actually talking about ecosystem. They've done a partnership with Microsoft, and they are helping their customers. I'm talking in the beverages industry about the same client. They've done an application for the farmers to help farmers predict the weather with machine learning techniques, and then know when to water the hoops. So they are helping their partners with advanced technologies, because in the end that will help them also. So this type of new, coming with something completely new, which was not possible before, I think is much more bringing much more value than just purely learning a new technology and just executing small bits and pieces here and there.
Okay. All right. I like those examples, and it kind of reminds me of a feature that I was watching recently about, as you mentioned, farmers. I know that I think it's IDB and a few other international organizations are looking at that very thing, right? Where they are taking small businesses like farmers and like basically like harvesters for raw materials, and they're actually giving them the tools to actually automate quite a lot of their work. So they don't have to, for instance, if they bring in, let's say they're bringing in materials from the field farming, it is automatically weighed, logged, cataloged, and they're automatically paid without actually having to sign a sheet of paper, use a pen or whatever it is. And so they can focus more on what they're good at, and all the processes in the background automatically take care of themselves, and they don't have to worry about making sure that the goods go off the market if it's transported properly. And of course, it introduces a level of traceability. But in terms of some of the clients that we may engage, right, I recognize that some of them may still be hesitant or even resistant to the idea of automation. What are some of the insights you can offer on helping us to help them bring about a meaningful change or even a different approach in their thinking towards automation?
So this indeed it reminds me of, you know, at the early stages years ago when we started the first automation project, and we had a kickoff at one of the clients, and in the kickoff meeting, some lady started to cry, and we were surprised. The managers were surprised, didn't understand what's happening. And of course, they were scared that the bots will take their jobs, right? So that was the news in the paper at that time.
Right.
So I think the change management aspect is really critical, and here is, I think, where we all play a very significant role. Educating about the benefits, linking the projects to the business transformation, to the business strategy, not doing technology for the sake of technology, but doing for the real, you know, profitability of the firm or whatever other objectives are set for that area. It's also, I mean, in the classical, I mean, change management is important in all transformation projects, and you know that in any system implementation, and even more in the automation space. Identifying all the stakeholders, making a clear communication plan, training them, actually identifying which would be the activities that people will perform once their part of their jobs will be performed by bots, right? They will need to be reskilled. They'll be trained in other activities, or even if it's about really reducing jobs and moving people somewhere else, how do you help the employees move somewhere else? That would actually ensure the success and the buy-in from the employees, because otherwise, of course, they will be resistant. They will not provide the information, and this will be, you know, blocking the project.
Okay. Michael said, like back in the late 1990s, still the case with BPM and ERP. IA seems to have similar issues where 70% of IT implementations fail to meet expectations. And he said it's something for us to be aware of. Aurelia, do you want to touch on that?
I think it clearly relates to what I just mentioned earlier, because we encountered this situation, you know, very high expectations raised by salespeople in the software houses, saying that the bot can, you know, save I don't know how much percentage of the FTEs, and then in reality you realize that there are many smaller activities which can be automated, but to really have the benefit, you need to redesign some processes, you need to standardize first of all, you need to maybe combine some technologies, you need to do the change management. So it's not just you bought a license of a bot and that's it. So I think as in all projects, it's about managing expectation and setting realistic expectations for the clients.
Right. And I guess this may also, Marina also asks a similar question, like, and I guess it ties into what you just said. How do we prioritize the processes for automation within a company?
What I've seen in practice, there are various approaches. Either you go towards the ones which are linked to the specific strategy. If increasing sales, it's an objective, then looking at the sales processes. So then you start with them. Or in some other cases, you also take into account the areas which are or are not impacted by other projects. Because if you know there are parts of the organizations which will go to certain transformation in half-year time, 1 year time, you might not want maybe to start with those because they will be changed soon. So then the work might not be might not produce effects in a certain period of time. What we also experienced in other clients is to look at which are the key indicators which the organization is following, and then looking down where are these indicators taking the information, the data from, and looking at those processes producing those KPIs. Because if you tackle directly those, then you'll have the direct impact on the KPIs that the firm is monitoring. And of course, there is the classical, if you start at the beginning, there is the classical low-hanging fruits, but that will come to an end at one point. And then there should be other techniques. There is also these days, once you maybe exhausted this type of approaches, there are process mining techniques or tools that will give you more accurate and more sophisticated analysis to then look at the automation parts. But this is also linked to the existence of digital processes, because if those processes are still on paper, then of course you cannot use the process mining. And this leads to maybe to one of the points you raised earlier, why maybe some big organizations are investing in their ecosystem of partners, for example, putting at their expense some tools at the availability of the smaller partners they have, because then they will receive the information automatically in electronic format.
Okay, so Nick had a question, and it's similar to a question that I was going to ask. So he's interested to know to what extent some of our more routine or labor-intensive processes within consulting firms are being automated. So I guess he means within our own. So like for instance, like EY or any other organization, like if some of these firms have actually started automating processes internally, not only for clients.
Yeah. I think this is, of course, part of our jobs. If it relates to such activities, collecting data, analyzing data, they are already obsolete. I know my colleagues in transaction services, when they do a lot of due diligence analysis and so on, they have already automated tools. So these reports are produced in a couple of hours, collecting data from everything which is available. So indeed, these ones are already automated, but I think this is for us to allow more time for the real consulting, the real value added advice that we can give to our customers.
Okay, all right. And he also asked, he said about 3 years ago, there was a sense that some entry-level consulting jobs would have started to disappear. And I guess it's a relevant question. He wants to know if this is happening as yet.
I think it relates to the same discussion. It depends what's entry level in which area, because in all the areas there will always be an entry level, right? So those will disappear. But on the other hand, if it's about really doing repetitive activities, that for sure, in accounting, in tax, or in audit even, everything which is repetitive, there are already tools starting to be used in the big in the big projects. Of course, it will always come at the the balance of, is the client able to provide the data in that format, enough data to be able to perform that job. So then, depending on that, of course, parts of those activities will not be able to be automated.
Okay. Well, I know that a couple of researchers and university professors have sort of indicated that they've sort of said at this point in time it may be too soon to say if these tools that we are implementing is going to take away our jobs, but they are seeing the potential for us to, like you mentioned, take away the repetitive tasks, automate those, and allow us to free up our, where you said, our unique value added skills, intelligence, knowledge to basically, like you said, provide value where it's actually needed, and not necessarily spend a lot of time maybe entering bills, for instance, in accounting or something like that, right? Where we could actually look at the data and make more intelligent will generate more intelligent insights, which we could use for the organization or that of our client organizations. Dwight had a question. He said he was very intrigued about your opening statement on the application of multiple technical solutions in layers. He wanted to know if you could expand on this a bit, please.
I think this is linked to what I said, that what do we mean by intelligent automation? You know, how do we orchestrate various technologies to automate end-to-end processes? And I think it's really about, and probably a technical architect or a solution architect would explain you much better than I do. But then it's about how do you combine, for example, because I've seen earlier something about IBM and some other tools, business process management tools. How do you combine a workflow management system with a chatbot, with a robot, with the machine learning algorithm, then to really automate end to end, because none of the system is doing, you know, end to end. For example, that I have colleagues in let's say in the finance processes, which they look at touchless invoicing, right? How can you issue invoices without touching anything? Really, connecting all the systems, and we know there are different systems for different parts of the processes in order to do that. So this is what I meant by orchestrating technologies and so on. I actually would be interesting to hear from you or any of the participants. How are your clients looking at the automation projects? Are they really taking them seriously? You know, it's like something that just try, or they are putting it like it's part of the strategy and will help them.
Well, I will allow everyone to jump in shortly, but I know that at least for me, again, and I raised that question about how do we change some of the mindsets for these organizations, because a lot of the organizations that I work with here in the Caribbean, they're not thinking along those lines at all. So they are thinking, well, of course, most of them immediately think about the cost. So they think that improving or automating some of their processes is a costly affair. And they start with this mindset that basically blocks them from thinking about, like you mentioned, about some of the possibilities rather than the cost, right? So it basically stymies their growth or limits what their potential is, because there is the assumption that it's a costing first rather than a value-based argument, right? So I have not seen it, at least with any of mine. And I don't know if anybody else want to jump in, chime in and say and answer your question, but I can't say that I've seen any organization actually ask any question or thinking about it seriously.
I'll just jump in, Adelwyn, because I agree with you, especially with small, medium-sized businesses. They're so busy running just to stay ahead of the curve, and they're successful at what they're doing. So the investment is part of it, but even the time and the attention to think about how can we improve. They know that there's things there that can be improved, but to do that, they have to take their eye off the ball of what's already working good enough. So how do you find that that amount of time where they can reinvest their energy into improving things so that they could be even more successful? It's a challenge.
It's true, and if I may link to what you said, we also see this, that for small and medium enterprises, the subjects are, or the approaches are sometimes different for exactly the reason that you mentioned. There is also this, at least in the automation space, with the automation vendor providers of the technologies, they have this concept of citizen development, which in big organizations is okay for increasing the digital skills of the employees, or for training them so that then they can be used in the really big projects. But it means basically using the automation for some specific tasks that I have myself on my own. So those concepts can be easily transferred in SMEs, because for them also processes are not so big, are not so complex. So then using those concepts on a more on a smaller scale can still help them, because in time slowly they will progress, you know.
Okay, so so I guess we would like to close off this morning's session. And Aurelia, I would really like to thank you for your time and your insights and sharing all that you did this morning.